a bit more of a sense of optimism, a bit more of a path, a sense of a way forward. Now you have concerns.
Итак, мы продолжаем
Murdoch, the younger son of Rupert Murdoch,
наше
has resigned from the
победоносное
board of News
путешествие
Corporation, citing disagreements over editorial content.
по
News
Соединенным
Corp owns the
Штатам
Times and
Америки.
the Sun newspapers, as well as many other international media
Я
outlets.
твердо
Three
решил
teenagers have been jailed for the manslaughter
взять
of
20-й
PC Andrew
уровень
Harper, who died
в
after
самое
being
ближайшее
shot behind a
время.
car in Berkshire last
То
August.
есть
The car's
практически
driver,
вот прямо
19-year-old
сейчас.
Henry Long, was sentenced to 16 years. Jesse Cole and Albert Boas, who are both 18, were each given 13 years.
Потому
Boris
что я
Johnson
очень
has been
хочу
accused of cronyism after nominating his brother for a seat in the House of Lords.
Крупного тягача.
Theresa May's husband Philip has been given a knighthood. Nick Eardley reports.
И хочу сделать это как можно
always
раньше.
attracts controversy, and this list is likely to prove no different. The Prime Minister's brother, a former Tory minister, is included, as is Mr Johnson's Downing Street aide, Sir Edward Lister. The Russian media tycoon, Evgeny Lebedev, who Mr Johnson has been known to socialise with in the past, will become a member of the Lords too. A number of Tory politicians are included. Former Brexit rebels like Philip Hammond and Kenneth Clarke, the former Scottish Tory leader Ruth Davidson, who won't take up her seat until she leaves the Scottish Parliament.
The BAFTA Television Awards have taken place in London. This year's event, hosted by Richard Ayoade, was a much briefer, socially distant event than normal. Our entertainment correspondent Colin Patterson was watching.
I think a lot of people will have enjoyed it a lot more than the more bloated show that you normally get. Briefly, some of the big winners: Chernobyl won Best Miniseries, Jared Harris won Best Actor for it. Two other things were double winners: End of the World, we can't say that word, the Channel 4 drama series. Naomi Ackie won Best Supporting Actress. And this was a bit of a shock. When it came to comedy, it did not go to Fleabag. It went to Stath Lets Flats, the Channel 4 comedy. And Jamie Demetriou also won the Comedy Award.
And Glenda Jackson took the Best Actress Award for Elizabeth is Missing. BBC News at 1:03.
Across BBC Local Radio and BBC
Надеюсь,
Radio
уже очень
5
скоро
Live. Jim
я смогу
Davis.
нормально возить тяжелые грузы.
Hello, good morning. It's Saturday, the 1st
В
of
данный
August.
момент
Welcome into a
позволить
brand
себе этого я
new
не
day,
могу.
brand new month, and all that. It's good to have your company. How are you? I'm with you through till
Скоро
5
ответим.
o'clock this morning, and our lines are open. We are live
О,
through the
да.
line. 0800 731
Скоро
2000 is the
извините.
number as we come to you once again from the studios of BBC Radio London. So don't worry if you missed the number. I will repeat it regularly through the course of the early hours, because this show's all about call. You can text as well. It's 81333, starting your text with the letters UK, or email jim@bbc.co.uk. So that's how to get in touch this morning as we continue our conversation into the early hours of this Saturday, the 1st of August. And, we start with the prospect of easing lockdown put on hold again. Restrictions in England due to come to an end this weekend have remained in place. The postponement for at least another 2 weeks now after an increase in coronavirus cases. So, for example, casinos and bowling alleys will remain shut, as Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, said it was time to squeeze the brake pedal. Face coverings will, of course, become mandatory in more indoor settings as well, such as cinemas.
Every point I have said, our plan to reopen the society and the economy is conditional, that it relies on continued progress against the virus. With those numbers creeping up, our assessment is that we should now squeeze that brake pedal in order to keep the virus under control.
He's also come up with a new phrase, which was an interesting one. I'll go over that in a minute. But England's chief medical officer, Professor Chris Whitty, stood alongside the Prime Minister yesterday morning now, warning that the UK may have to hit its limits on easing restrictions. Appearing alongside the Prime Minister at the briefing, Professor Whitty said that the idea we can open up everything and keep the virus under control is just wrong.
If we go beyond a certain point in terms of people getting together, linking up households, the rates of this virus will start to increase. And we have probably reached the limits of that. And if people continue to increase the number of people they meet, increase the social interactions they have, then the virus rate will go up, absolutely inevitably.
Mr. Johnson said planned changes to guidance for those who've been shielding during the pandemic and advice for employers will, however, still go ahead. So what we're seeing is a gentle increase in the number of cases. It's by no means anywhere near the way it was in March, for example, when we went into full lockdown. But figures published by the Office for National Statistics on Friday suggested that infection rates in England are still rising, with around 4,200 new infections a day, compared with 3,200 a week ago. And that correlates with I suppose, the releasing or the relaxing of lockdown restrictions. The more they relax, the more the cases tend to creep up, because, of course, the virus tends to be able to get a hold of us a little bit easier the more we're moving about, it seems, and the more interactions we find ourselves in. And that's why, for example, today the reopening of casinos, bowling alleys, skating rinks has been put on hold for at least another 2 weeks. Also, indoor performances will be delayed. Pilots of larger gatherings and sports venues and conference centres all back on hold. And, of course, the expansions of wedding receptions to allow up to 30 people is back on hold again as well, which will scupper many an event that I think has been looked forward to for a great many people. So that's the latest on what's happening in England. I think Nicola Sturgeon as well said something fascinating today, or rather yesterday now, with regards to the situation in Scotland, urging people in Scotland not to travel to virus hotspots in England and requesting those who live in, for example, the North West, Greater Manchester and surrounding areas, and indeed even in and around the Newcastle and North East areas, to please refrain from visiting Scotland as well for the time being. I thought that was quite an interesting stance to take. You're welcome to react to that. Also, Boris Johnson's decision to extend lockdown for a short period as well in regards to the matters that I've suggested. Also, this new phrase he came up with during the briefing, he trotted it out a few times: hands, face, space, get a test. It's not the catchiest one they've come up with, is it? But I suppose it carries a little bit of credibility when you think about the message that's contained within hands, face, space. It's the idea we should wash our hands regularly. We must not forget that. Face, you must cover your face in those enclosed public spaces. And space refers to social distancing, I think. It's not particularly clear, is it? Hands, face, space. But he kept saying it during the briefing yesterday. They are fans of slogans, aren't they, at the moment, our politicians? I wonder what you make of that as well. I'm not going to ask you the fluctuations between our four devolved nations and how we move forward from here, but I'm just generally interested in where your head's at with regards to what's going on right now. Obviously, we saw beaches packed full of people again yesterday on what was the third hottest day on record, according to the Met Office tonight. Understandable, I think, that people would want to go and get in the sea, for goodness sake, but I mean, my goodness me, the pictures of beaches once again at Bournemouth and Bognor were absolutely packed, weren't they? So you're welcome just to let me know your thoughts on all of that tonight. 0800 731 2000 is the number to call. Now, of course, today marks the day that the universal free TV licence for over 75s comes to an end. It's been described as a sad day for our older population. The BBC now will means test the entitlement to having previously delayed its introduction because of the pandemic. Over 75s must now receive pension credit in order to receive a free TV licence, which costs £157.50. Caroline Abrams, the charity director of Age UK, said that this is a sad day for our older population, many of whom are feeling badly let down by both the government and the BBC over the demise of these free licences. It's deplorable that any older person should have to make such a horrible choice with regards to whether or not they keep watching their television without a licence in breach of the law, or indeed things like food or heating. Look, we are the BBC. I am broadcasting from Broadcasting House this morning, and I will take your calls on that if you want to respond to that current situation. you're very welcome to let me know what kind of... I'm interested in what sort of situation that leaves you in. We tend to talk a little bit in generics with these sort of broad policy stories. I'm far more interested in real people's lives, and I'd like to know from you, if you're over 75, for example, does this actually genuinely mean now that you will perhaps struggle to afford essentials like food or heating if you have to pay for your TV license? Or is that stuff and nonsense to you? Are you perfectly able to afford a TV license? And these kinds of universal benefits for all over 75s are too generic. What do you think? 0800 731 2000. I was moved by the story of Dame Barbara Windsor this week. I'm sure you were as well, having been moved into full-time residential care a couple of weeks ago now amid her ongoing battle with dementia. Her husband, Scott Mitchell, who I don't think anybody could say has been anything less than utterly devoted to his beloved wife, spoke publicly about this on Friday, admitting that he was heartbroken by the move. Speaking to The Sun, Mr. Mitchell revealed, "I feel I'm on an emotional roller coaster. I walk around trying to keep busy and then burst into tears. It feels like a bereavement." He said that he's felt awful about taking the decision to place Barbara Windsor into a care home, as she didn't know what was happening. He added walking out of that house on that day was an incredibly tough thing to do, because the reality is I doubt if Barbara will ever return. He's acting on advice of doctors and neurologists who've said that her care requires that more intensive attention now. I think many of us have been in this situation, haven't we, where we've had to make decisions on behalf of either loved ones or parents, and finding care facilities that will suit their needs better than we can provide is an incredibly difficult watershed moment in any family's life, isn't it? And again, I'm fascinated by your story here. If you've got some experience to share about this, then please do, if you're feeling strong enough to call me and tell me the story. I would really like to hear it. Scott Mitchell described that Barbara Windsor's neurologist advised him to tell her she would be going away for a few days as her doctors changed her medication. Gosh, that's really hard, isn't it, to hear? But if you've been through that, and you can describe that process for me, I would be really interested to hear about it. 0800 731 2000. You're very welcome to respond to the heat today as well. Honestly, I was walking through the back garden today, and or yesterday, and I guess we're on Saturday now, and it actually felt like I was in an oven. It really did. It was just that blasting heat that you get normally if you step off an aeroplane or at a foreign holiday destination. When they open the doors and you walk out onto the steps, and you're like, whew. It felt like that today. Third hottest day on record. Of course, meteorologists said temperatures recorded at London's Heathrow Airport reached 37.8 Celsius. That's 100.04 Fahrenheit, making it the third warmest day ever recorded in the UK. How did you cope in the heat? 0800 731 2000. So lots again to talk about. Our lines are open. We'll just keep the conversation flowing through the night. We'll keep each other company. The lines are buzzing away, so let's crack on. You can text 81333, start your text with the letters UK, or you can email jim@bbc.co.uk. All right, let's start in Glasgow.
Which is between Port Glasgow and Gourock.
Yeah.
Now, there's been one outbreak at Amazon in Gourock, which is the far end of the coastline. And then the other one is Chemist in Port Glasgow, which is the other end of the coastline. So essentially, if that one of the chemists in Port Glasgow is kind of filtered through and it's not been caught, it could be like you just don't know, because I'm literally right between like 10 kilometres from one and 10 kilometres from the other ish, or 8 or 5. But you know what I mean? I'm like right in the middle. Not that I'm worried about myself, but all the people around me that are maybe getting Amazon deliveries or getting chemist deliveries, or you know, you just don't know.
Can I ask how you know? Is it being reported in local media that these outbreaks are taking place? Because that's very forensic detail of where these outbreaks are happening around you.
Do you not get? See, we get Nicola Surgeon's great. She comes on like Tuesday to Thursday and does a kind of a update and tells us all the statistics. And then I just kind of process them through my thoughts.
Well, I mean, we can.
I'm not a party member. No. I mean, I'm not like I'm not. It's not a political thing, but she just tends to say, she just gives the statistics, and then you can check for yourself.
Well, we can all access those statistics. I wondered whether you'd sort of proactively sort them out, or you just heard them on the news. So,
not at all. No, literally BBC Scotland or Scottish. It's right there.
So your sandwich.
I'm back to your licence fee. Sorry, just to interject with a wee point. I know I'm not at that age yet. Obviously, I hope my voice doesn't amazing. But see, the licence fee. Bear in mind that it's the government that decided that it had to go back to. It's actually the government that is. It's not the BBC's fault that the 75 plus are happening. It's the government's decision. You know, it's not. I just don't blame I know you've got to be unbiased because you are BBC, but as a person who just is, as I say, unpolitical, you've got to appreciate what BBC gives. And honestly, it just really annoys me, the fact that they're making this now, like, anyway, the TV, anyway.
Don't worry. Thank you for making that point. It's complex, isn't it, in the timeline of the thing?
It's so complex. It's so unreasonable. You think it's world service. The fact that I can put on my radio, if I've got no money and no things, I can put on an AM FM radio and I can get a signal, and somebody has to pay for that. And if it's the licence fee, then I think that's great. Honestly, sorry, I'm tired.
That's fine. So just to sum up your point about lockdown, obviously you're sandwiched there in between two localised outbreaks.
I don't feel like that. I went to the beach today because it was 25. I know you got 35 degrees down south, but up here we knew we would get 25 degrees.
Yeah, well, that taps off weather, that, isn't it? You know, you're not going to argue with that. That's lovely.
No, it was like early on. I was like, Mum, we're going to the beach. We're going to the beach. They had the beach, and it was just lovely. Just feeling a wee bit of sun, watching the clouds and watching the weather and watching the rain come, which always does when you're in there. You know, you've got Ireland just across from it. It's just we're just destined to get rain, but it makes our land.
It's going to come today. All right, well, Molly, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for getting the ball rolling for us this morning. That's interesting, isn't it? Molly's awareness of the localised outbreaks in and around her is guiding her behaviour somewhat. Are you watching that closely, that forensically, that kind of detail? It is challenging, isn't it, to try and keep up with all of the evolving advice, the way things are changing on an almost minute-by-minute basis. How on top of it do you feel? 0800 731 2000 is the number to call. 1:20 now then. Let's go to Wrexham next. Ian is there. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Hiya, mate. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Ian. Thank you for your call. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm good. The thing is, right, what's bothering me is I can't get to my local supermarket without having to get traffic jams for all the tourists coming into Wrexham and Wales. I live in the, it's like the doorway to Wales, isn't it, where I live, Wrexham. So I've had to turn back quite a few times. And just the basic things, I've not been able to get them because the traffic's been too bad. It's all been like caravans and campers and stuff like that.
Well, I was going to say, how do you know it's tourists? But if it's all caravans and motorhomes, then you can probably take a fairly decent stab at the fact that it's a lot of tourist traffic.
I would say that obviously, I could sort of guess.
Yeah, sure.
But the fact is, everybody's going to do a staycation this year, aren't they?
Well, that's right.
So I'm worried, right, about... I can't get to my local supermarkets. I come across traffic jams. And when I don't come across traffic jams, how many people from around the country are going to be in that supermarket that I'm going to?
It must be a worry if you live in a tourist destination, or as you yourself have described, you know, a gateway to a tourist destination.
The 483, the A55, etc.
Sure.
It's all into Wrexham and through to Wales. But every supermarket locally where I live, it's full of tourists. And there's a supermarket in Llangollen. It's a new one, but it's full of camper vans. So people are coming from all over the country just to pop into this place because that's the way through to the coast.
Yeah, well, they're stocking up on their way to their campsite, aren't they? So what would you rather, that the border was still in place and people weren't allowed to come to Wales, or?
Gosh, look, everyone's welcome in Wales, but I'd rather be stocked up before they came here.
I see. Okay.
Well, the supermarkets where they live, why can't they stock up there?
Well, I get what you're saying, because that just transfers the problem, I don't know, to Rhyl, doesn't it, or Colwyn Bay, because people will.
No. It's quite a long way from there.
No, I know. It transfers the problem from your doorstep to their doorstep, because they're still, the actual destination that these tourists are going to means they might not stop in Wrexham, but they will continue through to Barmouth or wherever and park up and use the facilities there. So it doesn't really resolve the overall problem. It just...
Unless they bought everything they needed before they left the destination to go to where they're going.
Well, look, I think there's some logic to that, to be honest, Ian. If you're going to have a staycation, at least have the decency to stock up locally before you go, so you're not overusing the facilities at your destination, or indeed having to stop en route. I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the thing is, over the last couple of months, it's been busy, obviously. Everyone's been paranoid and panicking.
Yeah.
Well, it's 3 times I've had to turn back from my local supermarket.
Gotcha.
You ask anyone that goes to Llangollen, and they'll tell you the same. Honestly, it's well, people need to get their stock-ups, obviously, but wouldn't they rather do it before they left? That's all I'm asking.
I think it's a good question, Ian. Thank you for your call this morning. A lot more people staycationing this year, and it was even that came up in the briefing, didn't it? Boris Johnson was talking about that, saying that absolutely people should still continue to staycation. He was absolutely determined to make sure that people could feel that they could stay, or rather go on holiday, but just stay here in the UK. I'll try and play some of that in a bit if I can. Saturday morning, 1st of August, BBC Local Radio with BBC 5 Live. Iris is on the line next in Coventry. Hello, Iris. Good morning to you.
Hello. I'm very sorry and very concerned for a lot of the elderly people because they rely on the television.
Indeed.
And the state pension will not allow payment to be made weekly, monthly, whatever. And I don't really know how the care homes will go on because obviously it will be one licence for all. So I don't know how that works out really. But I think there will be, within a month or so, perhaps less than that, a lot of lonely people because of relying on the television for company and for obviously some of the adverts that are on as regards products and food and so on. And I don't think that the heating or food entity, I think they will choose that avenue and more or less be very lonely at home without the telly. I'm very sorry for all those people because it's quite a difficult job to get on to pension credit or pension credit permanently.
That is a worry, Iris, isn't it? That the process of applying for and being approved for pension credit can be a challenging one for many people, and it's not as simple as just asking for it. There are forms to fill in.
Because you have a lot of form filling to do.
Absolutely.
And what I call there is a means test type thing on income.
Correct.
And this is where I think that perhaps the government or whoever is in charge, hasn't really thought about how it's going to end up with a lot of lonely people. Unless you know differently about what licence for a care home is or how they deal
Well, with
with
regards
them,
to care home, I'm not sure of the absolute specifics, but my understanding is if you're broadcasting a television set in a day facility or a shared facility, you only require one licence for the overall property. I'm happy to be corrected on that. I wouldn't understand why any more than just the one television licence for that single set would be required.
I know a lot of the elderly people's associations or bodies, are very concerned because there will be the decision either food, heat, or the telly, and probably the telly will be the lesser evil of the three. But then there again, it will raise a lot of loneliness because there are invalids and disabled people who do not sort of get out or rely on the television for company.
So just to give this some context, obviously a BBC spokesperson said that it was the government that had ended the funding for over 75's TV licence, and that the BBC has made the fairest decision possible. I thought this was quite interesting what she said actually. She said continuing with the government scheme for free TV licences for all over 75s would have cost £745 million a year. And just to give that some context, she said ending it would have meant the closure of BBC 2, BBC 4, the BBC News Channel, BBC Scotland, BBC Radio 5 Live, and a number of local radio stations, all of which would have to go if they had continued to fund that universal benefit, which that's huge, isn't it? That's not just a nibble. That's a giant chunk out of the BBC's output.
Quite, yes.
So you can understand why...
I can understand that, yes. That sort of, like it with regard to the figures involved. But either they need to raise the state pension or something to do with this pension credit to allow quite a lot of the elderly who have to be at home because they're disabled or can't get out or have no relatives. I think that it hasn't really been thought out as regards the payment side. It did say that in the press the other day that payments would be worked out and people would know, but I don't think that a lot of the state pension people, I don't think it will allow that.
Well, Iris, you've added a really interesting angle to this discussion, which is that I hope that those responsible for gathering the licence fee together will approach the next phase of this process with great compassion and care and advice, and do it gently and ensure that those that are not in receipt of pension credit and will therefore have to pay for their TV licence are informed of that in a way that doesn't come as a shock and of course doesn't leave anybody struggling. And of course I must say that Age UK at this point provide excellent advice to people with regards to applying for pension credit and indeed even checking for your eligibility for it. So it's well worth examining. Iris, thank you. You make some brilliant points. I'm glad you called. Thank you. We'll continue next. We're going to Blackpool and Liverpool in just a moment. 0800 731 2000. Actually, let's hear some more about that.
This is an important message for anyone who has a free over 75 TV license.
Ну что ж, теперь будем
From the 1st of August, unless you
стоять и
receive
смотреть на
pension
поезд.
credit, you will need to pay for your TV license. Credit. It's easy and you can do everything from home. If you've already applied for a free license, you will be receiving it soon. For more information, go to tvl.co.uk/age.
Text 81333 and start your message with the letters UK. Text are charged at your standard message rate. See our privacy notice on the BBC website.
And now Kevin in Hereford writes, Jim, Professor Chris Whitty said people should not gather in large groups. So what do people go and do? They congregate in their hundreds on Bournemouth, Brighton and Poole beaches. Very selfish and irresponsible, especially as the virus is slowly starting to creep up in some areas. Do people not realise that their actions could fuel the fire for the virus, says Kevin? Pat writes, Jim, in this searing heat, I put my costume on and lay in the grandchildren's paddling pool. We haven't seen them since lockdown began. Pat, that would have been quite a sight, I bet. Hello to June. Now, June writes on the subject of Barbara Windsor going into a care home. She says, my mum had dementia. She also had physical health issues, and in the end, it left her bedbound. She would cry when left alone and sob when carers tried to change or wash her. Eventually, after my sister had taken all the leave from work that she could and my husband and I were exhausted, we admitted we could no longer manage Mum in our own home and set about finding a care home. There were some awful places out there, but we found a beautiful one. Mum has always expressed a wish to die in her own home, telling us how much she loved her little house. The Tuesday she was picked up by ambulance and taken to the care home, I felt so evil. When my sister and I left Mum there that day, she looked so small and helpless, laying in the bed with the cot sides up, waving sadly as we left. When we visited the next day, she seemed settled and smiled. On the Thursday, my sister didn't visit, but my husband and I did. Mum passed away about half an hour after we left. Had we known how little time she had left, we would never have moved her. But we knew we couldn't carry on as we had been. It had honestly been the hardest thing we've ever done. Gosh, June, thank you for writing that onto an email for me this morning. That's very moving. And this is the scenario, that's the situation, isn't it? With regards to Barbara Windsor's move into a care facility this week that prompted me to ask you about your own experience of that this morning. 0800 731 2000 if you'd like to call, or you can email jim@bbc.co.uk. OK, John is in Blackpool next. Hello, John. Good morning, sir.
Hello, Jim.
Nice to talk to you. Good morning. Thank you for your call.
Thank you very much for listening to it.
Go ahead. What would you like to say?
Well, my wife has just been admitted into a care home for respite care with dementia and Alzheimer's for the last 5 years. We celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary this year, God willing, and I'm so lost without her. It breaks my heart, the fact that she's not with me now. I'm speaking here, looking at these TV screens, and it's good that you're able to bring this topic up, because I never thought it would happen to me. I've loved my wife so much, and the fact that she's in a care home now where she should be beside me. She fell out of bed on a regular basis, and I broke my wrist trying to stop her from falling out of bed. And the fact that my hand was put into plaster at Victoria Hospital, and subsequently my wife was then taken into care because I could no longer care for her. Now, the fact that now I've got myself right, I want my wife back. I want my wife to come home because she's part of me. And I love her to bits. And my mum and dad remained married for 65 years. And my lovely wife, who's given so much to me, and she's been my rock. And I can't help her.
John,
no matter what I say.
You know this is not your problem that's happening, and it's not your... I know it feels very personal, but it's not your fault. And I know it feels like it at the moment because you so desperately want to be there for her, but...
I do, because I link arms with her. And the fact that she falls down, and the fact that she's got this condition, that I'm fighting her damage in her brain, which is incurable because she's got this dementia and Alzheimer's, and there's not a backbone in her body.
When
she's done everything for us.
I know.
She's done so much for me, and I miss her so much.
I know, John. I know. You say she's in there for respite care, so there's prospect of her coming home to you at some point, is there?
I've altered downstairs
Okay.
to meet her needs, so that we can work on a ground floor level.
Brilliant.
with actually a bed downstairs, so she can't fall out.
And would they provide you with in-home carers to come and assist you as well, do you think?
Well, they don't. They say that they're concerned about my health.
Yeah,
well, I'm not concerned about my health, because I'm more concerned about my wife.
No, sure, but you have to be strong and fit, and if you've got a broken wrist, you can't lift her or help her. So your health is important, isn't it?
I'm backed up by my son, who has done so much for us, because he's been my other rock, because he has provided care and helped us and caters for us, cooking the meals, and he's been here tonight.
That's good to know.
And he comes every that I just feel, well, I mean, I've had a life. I know I've had a life, because I taught Billy J. Kramer golf.
Wow. That's a claim to fame and a half.
and he had 3 number ones in America and 3 number ones in Great Britain. And I said to Billy J. Kramer, I said, I can't teach you golf anymore, because I'm going to Blackpool. He said, oh, that's great. You'll still be able to teach me, because I've got a summer season at the North Pier. So I was in his flat near the Manchester Hotel the entire season there. I went to the stage door at the North Pier with my shades on and my mohair suit that I got from Ian St. John, £5. And the thing was, I was signing autographs at the stage door. And the fact that I met all the steps through that, I got Val Doonican signed up, and Ronnie Collins and Henry Cooper signed up with Lime Scott Knitwear, and it would be worth about £2 million today. I was director of golf in Corfu.
Well, look, John, your story is vivid. I can tell, and it's coloured in by your wonderful wife. What's her name, by the way? You haven't mentioned her name.
Margaret.
Well, look,
Margaret.
You must have a dialogue. You must keep an open dialogue with.
I am going to do a life story, and I want someone that might be listening that can put together my autobiography, because I have got things to tell that people would love to hear.
I think you're right.
Because the fact that when I was going to a party, Billy J. Kramer said to me, we're going to write his 50th birthday party at the Springfield Hotel in St. Helens, and will you come? So, like, I was always there in the apartment anyway.
Well, John, don't spoil the story. Keep it for the book for now. Listen, I've got to go, but lovely to talk to you, and I do wish you well with your situation with your beloved wife, Margaret, and I'm absolutely sure you'll be celebrating your 50th anniversary together before you know it. Thank you for your call this morning. It's 20 to 2. Let's continue. George is on the line next in Cornwall. George, how are you, sir? I've been thinking about you a lot this week. How's things with you?
I'm coping, thank you, Jim.
Good. A lot of reaction to your call to me last week when you disclosed to us that you'd had a cancer diagnosis. So how are you feeling at the moment?
I got morphine now to help to deal with it.
All right, okay.
But then I wanted, before I go on about the blocked, and I wanted to thank people who rang in last week, wishing me well.
Yes. Well, you've managed to lodge yourself into people's hearts, George, over these last few months, just telling us the story of your beautiful roses and all of your wonderful work in the community and so on. Hear you say last week what you told us, so I'm glad to hear that you're coping, and you sound quite chipper as well, I have to say.
I'll give you an example, if I may, quickly. I've got a post lady that comes in every morning at 2:30 on her way to work and give me a cup of coffee and see if I'm okay. Wow. This is what people are like down here in Cornwall, you know, and I'm sure they're like at other places as well.
That's good. That's good to hear.
But about the lockdown, we've had people down here recently that have been breaking into places and going to the loo, anywhere, on sand dunes and all sorts.
Ah, right, okay.
It's been terrible.
Yeah, I'm hearing quite a lot of reports of this all over the country, actually, at beauty spots in particular and beaches where there aren't perhaps as many public facilities as you might normally expect to find.
They were going to put porter loos on the beach, and then they said they couldn't afford for somebody to be there looking after them.
Yeah, that's the problem, because they need to be cleaned practically after every single use and
that's
sanitised, and it's impossible for local authorities to afford to be able to do that.
But Cornwall isn't the same this year. It's strange, isn't it?
Well, you've got the perfect storm, really, haven't you, of a restricted amount of facilities because of the ongoing situation with the virus, and of course an influx of tourists that wouldn't normally be there because they'd be in Benidorm, you know, and it's going to be challenging, isn't it, for destinations like yours? It's like Ian was saying, Wrexham earlier on, people are piling into Wrexham en route into Wales because they're stocking up at the local supermarkets and before heading off to their campsites. And they're just not used to that number of people. We're not designed to cope with that number of people wanting to staycation.
Oh, before I go,
yes, George.
Could I say thank you to Sarah in Somerset, who wrote me a lovely letter.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Very kind of her.
Good. Well, that's lovely that your local post office person is coming in every morning at 2:30 to make you a cup of coffee, George.
Yeah. And, by the way, the village has taken over the garden from me now, which took a big load off my mind.
That's great to hear. So you've got a bit of help in the garden with all that work. That's good to
Yes.
know. Lovely. Keep calling. Won't you promise me you'll stay in touch?
I will do that.
All right, take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Ros in Shropshire writes, Jim, as a disabled person living on benefits, I have to pay for my TV licence. The state pension is a lot more than sickness benefits, and we can afford the monthly payment, says Ros. Thank you for that this morning. 81333, start the text with the letters UK. Hello to JJ, pinch punch Jim, first of the month, no return. Oh, right, okay, well, thank you. White rabbits, I'll say to you then. George is in County Durham next. Hello, George. Good morning, sir.
Well, good morning.
Dear, thank you for your call. What would you like to say, sir?
Well, just this pensioners again. Well, sorry, the way the system is, I live in a small village. There's nothing really happens down here. My telly's went bust. I can't afford to put it right, so the thing is, I won't be able to afford to watch TV anyway, but what really bothers me is my main way of getting news is basically through a very old radio set.
I see.
I don't know what the situation is with regards to the radio, because the way I understand it, I believe the television license, you've got a television license, you actually qualify for the be able to use the radio as well.
Yes, but if you don't have or use a television license, I'll start that again, George. Sorry, if you don't have or own or use a functioning television, then you don't require a license. But you're perfect.
Well, my TV is bust. I'll be quite honest. I'm not interested in soaps. I don't do football. The only thing I was interested in with the TV is you got the news and you actually seen what was happening in different places. You know, I worked overseas years ago. and sometimes stuff used to come up on the TV, and there were places where I had actually worked. It was nice to see.
Yes.
I'm not going to be able to afford to pay the TV license because we were promised that when we were 75, we wouldn't have to pay a TV license. Well,
yes, I understand.
I'm born on the 1st November 1944. Work that out. It doesn't take a lot of maths. I'm 75 now.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to have to find that money if I want to get it. I'm going to have to find the money to get a TV because mine is beyond repair.
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to afford to get that. I'll put up with it, but I'm not sure how I'm standing actually with the radio. Listening to an old radio.
No, let me explain absolutely clearly then. You only need a TV license if somebody in your house, George, watches or records live television programs.
Вне зависимости от того, получаю сейчас 20 уровень за это или нет, уже никаких тест-драйвов сегодня не будет, а то я уже вырубаюсь, спать хочу. Так что уже надо довести бы, а завтра днем, вот тогда мы все это и сделаем.
And I had to work overseas because the jobs weren't available here. But I had enough skills to be able to work overseas.
Good.
And when I was doing that, I was making quite good money. But obviously, when I got back to the UK, the situation being what it is, and prices going up all the time.
Yes.
I can have my own allotment. I keep myself fit because we haven't got many shops in the village. So I get myself entertained with that.
So,
and put
George,
good food on the table.
Can I?
The whole point is this. Like, yes, I've got a bus pass, and that's very handy as well.
Good.
But in my little village, I haven't got much choices of buses, and I've got to make sure I get back in time. Otherwise, I've sometimes had to walk maybe 3 or 4 miles from where the drop-off point is because I can't get back to the village at that time of night.
George, can I ask you a question then, George, if you don't mind?
Certainly.
Do you want to have a television again and be able to watch the TV in the future?
I would love to have a TV just for the news. I'm not interested in much else at all. I don't do soaps. I don't watch sports on TV. Okay. But I do like to see the visual thing on the news.
Sure.
TV.
In which case, I have another question then. Do you receive pension credit at the moment?
No, I've never applied. Okay. What I do is I've got my straight pension that I'm paid, end of story.
Yes.
I've never investigated any extras because I've always been able to basically manage on what's coming in. Right. And with me being single as such, I've grown a lot of my own stuff, so my food bill isn't huge. But the thing is, my house is all electric. It doesn't cost us a lot because I cook with slow cookers at night time and I get electric at the half price rate.
So George, one more question. Have you got a pen and paper handy?
I've got a pen. I haven't got much paper. I've just got a little scrap of paper that I wrote your number down.
I want to give you a little number to call if that's all right.
Yeah?
Can you scribble this one down for me?
Yeah, well, hold on, I'll have to change it all because my phone's one of them little tiny things.
That's all right.
I've got cranberry in the hand to write with.
You tell me when you're ready, and I'm going to give you a phone number to write down. Okay? Tell me when you're ready. My worry is that there'll be a lot of people in George's situation.
Well, in some respects, I'm better off than a lot of people because I'm independent. I'm pretty fit for my age.
Good.
But the point is that doesn't help me pension out any.
So are you ready to write this number down?
Yes, I am.
Good. 0191.
0191, yeah.
386.
386.
3856.
3856.
All right. Now that's the number for Age UK County Durham.
Right.
And if you give them a call, they're going to help you identify if you're eligible for pension credit, and if you are, you'll get a free TV license, and they'll also be able to advise you and help you to perhaps either get your TV repaired or even find a way to make a new one affordable for you, George.
Well, I was told by a friend of mine who used to repair TVs is a waste of time, that.
Well, sometimes it is. Yeah, sometimes it's folly to try and repair these old sets. It'll be more expensive than it's worth, and actually you can get a new one relatively cheaply these days, and Age UK will be able to assist you with that. George, good luck. Give them a call. And hopefully that will set you on the road, because you are entitled. This is the thing, you see, people like George have said, I've never bothered to investigate whether I'm eligible for this, but that's the problem. There are countless people around the country that could be eligible for pension credit but have never investigated. Your local Age UK is a good place to start, because they'll be able to advise you about the application process and whether you might be eligible for that pension credit. And if you are, then you're eligible for a free TV licence as well moving forward. So there's lots of avenues to explore. Right, Cliff is in Dungeness next. We've got the news on the way soon. 0800 731 2000. Cliff, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Jim. You're in the perfect job, you know. I don't know what the world's going to do if you leave that position.
Well, look, that's very kind of you, Cliff. Thank you. I wasn't expecting compliments, but that's very nice of you. What's on your mind today, Cliff?
You know, it's just someone who can talk to people and listen to them without having an agenda to drive forward division and anger. You are just in the moment, and it's exactly what people need at night, and it's lovely. So well done, Jim.
Well, thank you. I enjoy it.
I was calling about Barbara Windsor, but just on the subject of the TV licence, very quickly, if I can.
Yeah.
I've thought about this quite a bit, and I thought that perhaps when people reach the age that previously they would get the licence free, perhaps it could be a reduced price. And for dementia, people with dementia diagnosed, I would say that has to be free. And the reason is I've worked with and know of people who've had dementia. And what I find is that their attention to television diminishes. It may be very, very, very much in their life at first, but eventually they might just switch it off. I'd like to see a more kind of graduated decline of the licence, if that were possible.
Yes, I hear you. There will be reasoning behind the way that this has been approached. I know it's been modelled and tested, and all sorts of things have been going on behind the scenes, way above my pay grade, but it's by no means ideal, this situation, is it? No. I understand.
The other thing is, of course, they may have to pay for a licence if they're looking at TV on the net as well, I think, if they use
Yes, you're right, and I was going to ask George that, but he took me off on a tangent. But you're quite right to point out that actually you also need a TV licence if you download or you watch programmes on iPlayer and so on. So yes, it's not just an actual set in the corner of the room. If you watch TV on your computer, you do also need a licence.
That's it. But there's some great programmes on if people can afford it. I do think it's worth it. On the subject of Barbara Windsor, I have every sympathy with Scott Mitchell, who I understand is calling for more support for the families of people who have a person with dementia. And you know, Jim, you've been very good with me. My mother died recently, and she had dementia. But I've come into contact with so many people, and there is a problem with dementia because, as we heard your caller before, it was 2 callers ago, the gentleman who was in tears about his love for his wife.
Yeah, it's a lovely job.
And it's just so frustrating because this person who you love is slipping away from you. You can't connect with them as well as you could. You can't be there for them all the time if they go into a home, to look after them and to make sure that someone is offering them their water and their food, and to make sure they're getting the care and the love. And it takes a lot of monitoring to be able to feel confident about this. And I do think an awareness of people's psychological difficulties in coping with a relative with dementia needs to be looked at. Because I think the help, while is well-meaning in many cases, it's not always as thorough and as professional as it could be. I think there's a lot of common things and good advice, but if you really want to go deep into the clever ways that you can support somebody with dementia, so you can really get through the presentation of their muddled thinking into their feelings, there are techniques for doing that.
I think that's
it's not really taught enough. So
it's not. And those that provide care for loved ones, which is a huge sector of our community, which the NHS and the government rely so heavily upon, because without them, I mean, we'd be on our knees as a nation overnight. If people stopped caring for their loved ones, as you did and as John clearly did for his wonderful wife Margaret, then the NHS would collapse overnight. So, the fact that we have so many people who are devoted enough to their family and parents and wives and partners to provide that care it's essential to the running of this country. But you've made such a crucial point that many people sort of just end up caring for their loved one. They didn't sign up for it. It wasn't. Nobody's been on a course to do it, and suddenly you find yourself faced with complex medical, psychological issues and care needs that you were never trained to deal with. And actually, many people are never provided with that kind of support or information unless you start trawling around on the internet and try to find all this advice. It's never given to you, is it?
Yeah. I mean, they often say that the last people to really realise that their loved one has dementia are the people closest to them, because there's a build-up of difficulties and of sometimes conflicts.
And denial. We can't forget denial either.
Yeah. And we want to think, well, that person's just been difficult, because the option of thinking that there's something quite serious wrong with their ability to think and that it might decline is a horrible one. So it causes people all sorts of stresses, and I think they need a lot of help on that. Lockdown, Jim's been a particular problem, and it was a great problem for me, because in the first part of lockdown, I don't know what it's like now because my mum died, as I said, but in the first part, I could not get in order to support her. And that caused me, and I'm a therapist, it caused me so much psychological stress that it really did affect my work. And I haven't felt stressed like that all my life. I've never really been depressed, and I've never had any conditions of mental difficulties as far as I know, apart from the usual things that we all get from day to day. But yeah, I was completely knocked back at that no-win situation where whatever you try and do, you're stuck and you can't get in to help someone. I think that was such a damaging experience.
Так, ну уровень я поднял, но и не более сегодня, а то я вон уже на дороге начал засыпать, даже немного говорил, так что все, пора.
800-731-2000 is the number. Matt, I don't want to rush you, Matt, so I'm going to come to you right after the news, if you don't mind holding on. Karen too, hang on there for me, I'll be right with you. Good morning to Minnie Jeeves. Jim, I'm 92 now. If someone is entitled to pension credits, they will still get a free licence. If they struggle to apply for pension credits, there are organisations like Age UK or indeed Citizens Advice who will help. Is it better?
На этом все.